Tetzah. V'kivel Hayudim Chelu Lasos, and the Yidden accepted what they began to do. So there is the famous verse of the Frierdiker Rebbe that explains this pasuk. I know this means what they began Matan Torah. That's the Hechelu Lasos. What they began to do on Matan Torah, Gomru L'Kabel Ato Me'achashveidish. They concluded to accept now in the days of Achashveidish before it. And this drush of the Frierdiker Rebbe on the words "V'kibil Hayudim Shechelu Lasos" is the similar concept of a similar Maimer Chazal, that the Chazal learned this out actually from a different pasuk. So it's the same idea, but the Chazal use a different pasuk that you learn it out from. It's like it's brought down the Gemara all the pasuk. Kimu v'kibil Hayudim, they fulfilled and they accepted the Yidden. And like I mentioned last time already, seemingly the pasuk is over here out of order. Why does it say they fulfilled and they accepted? Usually it works the other way around. You accept and then you fulfill. So the Gemara explains, they fulfilled what they already accepted previously. In other words, by Matan Torah they accepted, and by the Nes of Purim they fulfilled, they solidified. Now that the Rebbe goes on to explain, this also helps to understand why it says v'kibil in the pasuk that the Frierdiker Rebbe learns this out from the beginning of our Maimer. He accepted in the singular. Though immediately afterwards it says the Yidden, which is in plural. So it should have said v'kiblu haYehudim. Why does it say v'kibel? Since this is similar to what it says by Matan Torah. That the Yidden encamped, but it doesn't say they encamped in the plural, but by Yichan Lashon Yachid, it says by Yichan the singular, he encamped. Ukadisa Medrash, like it's brought down the Medrash of Inyan, the Vayichan Lashon Yachid, Paul in the idea that it said Vayichan in the singular that brought about Matan Torah, or the giving of the Torah. Because in the travels and all the encampments up till Har Sinai, there was still not an idea of unity, which is the idea of Yachid when something is said in the singular. Only when Yisrael encamped in the singular over there, L'Shain Yachid, Hashem said, this is now the time that I shall give them my Torah. Therefore, just like then, when the Eibishter said that only then, after the Yidden encamped as one, then he gave them the Torah. So in a similar vein, the completion of Matan Torah, which took place by Purim, was also in a singular. Therefore, also when they concluded what they began in Matan Torah, v'kibil, it says they accepted in the singular. So the Rebbe goes on to ask, and there's what we need to understand. Matan Torah, Matan Torah, there was the idea that they prefaced and they said, we will do before we will hear or understand. The ad to such a degree was such a powerful event. Because of this, 600,000 malachim came. And they tied onto the Yidden 2 crowns. One crown corresponding to what they said we will do, and one crown corresponding to what they said we will hear and understand. And also another thing we find that took place by Matan Torah v'gamal called Dvar Malchus. It says by every single statement of the Eibishter, the neshamas flew out of them. So we see such amazing things that took place by the time of Matan Torah. It wasn't just that they encamped as one, but they had all these other things. The eighth top of page 12, we say, that it's only a beginning. It's like it says in our pasuk, they only began to do the ilu as opposed to a kabbalah, v'kibil, when it comes to receiving and accepting hasim v'agmar, the conclusion at the end. Was only in the days of Achashverosh. When the days of Achashverosh, the only similarity that I have with Matan Torah is v'kibil in the singular to the Vayichan in the singular took place from Matan Torah, but there was no Nasr and Ishma, and there was no Al-Kol Dibur Parkin and Shmosam. So how can one compare? Further on line 3, Gamsar will have also need to understand. Gael Matan Torah Razal concerning given the Torah, the Chazal said, Moshe kibel Torah misinai umisara liyeshua. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, and he transmitted it to Yeshua. That's a very interesting thing. Moshe and Yeshua were both there, and still in all, Moshe is called the receiver, and then he was the one that transmitted it to Yeshua. Yeshua didn't receive it directly. I know this means Shahayu as looking, but even Kabbalah Torah, that means that there were distinctions and differences in the manner of the receiving of the Torah. Though in general, the entire idea of Matan Torah was for the entire nation, to such a degree that initially there had to be that Moshe descended. And only after Moshe descended was the Torah given. So, in other words, that this whole thing needed to have a process that involved the Am Yisrael. In other words, that Moshe had to go down in a level to the Yidden. Let's see on the right side, he brings the words of the Medrash about this. Line 25 in the Bir B'derech Hefsher on the right. So he brings a Medrash, it says, Bikish HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liten Eser Dibros. The Hashem wanted to give the Aser Sadibros. Moshe Oymen Mitzidoi. So Moshe was standing at Hashem's side. Amra Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ani Goylo Lahem Eserakia, V'Omer Anoichi Avai Lekecha. I will unscroll the heavens, like move it aside, and I will say Anoichi Avai Lekecha. Hey Moimrim. So then the people would say, if I would do it that way, Mi Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe. Is Hashem saying Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, or is it Moshe? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was standing next to Hashem. Hello, Yerid Moshe, let Moshe descend. And then afterwards I will say, I am Hashem your God. Amar Lois, he told them, Lech Reid, go down to Alisa, Atav Aaron Imach, and then you will go up, you and Aaron with you. Ad Moshe Yerid, until Moshe descended, then Nigla Kadosh Baruch Hu, then Hashem revealed himself. Shenamar Vayered Moshe Ala'am Miyad Vaydaber Elokim. It says Moshe descended to the nation immediately afterwards, and Hashem spoke. So, what do we see? That on the one hand, we're saying that all the Yidden were the same, and they seemingly received the Torah on the same level, no distinctions between them. Still, all the Rebbe goes on. Back to the text, line 9, after the parentheses. Still, in all, there were differences in the manner of receiving. Chazal said, Moshe was a separate area. He was like one divider for himself. Aaron was in a different level, so he had a separate separation. By him, it was something different. So we see this idea that then we bring, and Rashi brings down even a Chumash, that people had different sections, and the Kohanim had a different section, that Moshe was closer than Aaron, Aaron was closer than the Kohanim, etc., etc. And in general, Moshe was completely his own division, That only about Moshe it says that Moshe received the Torah. It doesn't say it about Aaron, doesn't say it about Yeshua, doesn't say it about the Kohanim and so on. I knew that Moshe was a vessel that received and accepted and took in the Torah the way it was given on Har Sinai. As opposed to Yeshua, it was only transmitted to Yeshua. The idea that Yeshua was a receiver, that's only a separate thing, not that he was a receiver directly from Hashem. It's not the same type of receiver like Moshe directly received it from Hashem. As opposed to the Eden receiving what they began to do in the days of Achashverosh. We see an unbelievable thing. Then all the Eden were in such a state that but at the beginning by Matan Torah, which is the part of the pasuk that says that idea of that something that only took place by Moshe, only by Moshe it says Kibul Torah. That was in the time of Matan Torah. But now, in the time of Purim, Matan Torah, it's a call Yehudim as opposed to the days of Achashverosh. The Matan Torah was by all Yidden. But if in v'kibil, Yehudim in such a way that it's called v'kibil. All the Yidden are in the state of v'kibil. No distinctions, no differences. We don't say Mordechai received more and the other Yidden received less, or in a different manner. That's a further question. We need to understand line 24. What it says after the Yidden accepted. So it says afterwards, it says, it says further in the Megillah, it says the Yidden fulfilled and accepted. Just like we brought before, that the Gemara derives the idea that the Yidden accepted in the time of Achashverosh, but they fulfilled the reign in the time of Matan Torah, so they derive it from that other pasuk, not from v'kibil HaYehudim, but kimu v'kiblu. So there's an interesting thing that b'shtei tevis kimu v'kiblu akri u'b'lashon rabbi. The way the words are read in the Megillah, it's read in the plural. Aval haksivu v'kibel lashon yachid. That other time, where it says kimu v'kiblu, the word v'kibel is written in the Megillah, not v'kiblu, the way it's read, but kibel in the singular. It's written in the singular the way it's completely written earlier, v'kibel HaYehudim. In other words, like this. Earlier in the Megillah, it says v'kibel HaYehudim. It says it, it's read in the singular, it's pronounced in the singular, it's written in the singular. The Kri and the Ksiv are the same. Later it says, kimu v'kiblu HaYehudim, where it says v'kiblu, even though it's read v'kiblu, it's written v'kiblu. So what's the point about this? From this understood, yesh peshnei in yon, that in the pasuk, v'kiblu HaYehudim, the later pasuk, that has in it two components. Hein v'kibel lashon yachid, v'hein v'kiblu lashon rabim. Both v'kibel in the singular and v'kiblu in the plural. The fact that it's written one way and it's read a different way, that indicates that it has both components, it has both aspects. However that is, we'll leave that for the Maimon to explain. Masha'enkin, as opposed to top of page Zay, the pasuk v'kibel HaYehudim shechelu la'asos, in the pasuk that we began this Maimon with. The later pasuk in the Megillah, it says that the Yidden received, accepted what they began to do, and the pasuk v'kibel HaYehudim, it's not just the way it's written, but it's also the way it's pronounced. Both the way it's read and both the way it's written, it's all lashon yachid, which means in v'kibel HaYehudim there are no both aspects of the plural and the singular. but there's only the singular. Whereas when it says earlier, Vikimu, Vikiblu, over there, there's to be found both the singular and the plural because it's written one way and it's read a different way. Any questions before we go on to his base? Okay, page Zion, line 3, Ois base. You've Pirish Advarim and understood the explanation of these matters according to the exact expression that's brought down in many places. And the entire Megillah, the Yidden are called Yehudim. We mentioned this also in the previous Maimon we learned. Though there were also Yidden from many other Shvatim, not just from Shevet Yehuda. Even though we say there's Yehuda Binyamin, we're soon going to talk about Shevet Binyamin, but that doesn't mean there was clean demarcation lines. Even though we say that Aseres HaShvatim went into Golus, there was still other Shvatim mixed in, because there wasn't like, people stayed specifically in their particular area in Eretz Yisrael and so on. So that's why, even now, we're not necessarily, even though the majority may be from Yehuda and Binyamin, but there's mixed in other Shvatim as well. The Rebbe goes on to say, especially Mordechai, he was not from Shevet Yehuda. Calling the Purim through, Mordechai was affected the entire idea of Purim. It's surely the main thing or the primary thing that Yidden accepted what they began to do. This is obviously done with Mordechai's encouragement and through Mordechai's influence. The simple reading of the Megillah says that he wasn't Shevet Binyamin. That's what it means. Ish Yemini. He was a man from Binyamin. The Gemara deals with it. How did it says Mordechai Yehudi? On one hand calls him Yehudi, on the other hand says Ish Yemini. Somebody answers as it depends. From his mother's side, he was this way. From his father's side, he was that way. Or he's just called a Yehudi like everybody else because he's Moide B'chal Torah Kula, whatever it is. But in the simple sense, he was Shevet Binyamin. He was actually a descendant of Shaul HaMelech, who was Shevet Binyamin. Afal Pikein, and still in all, Yavas calls on Megillah and them are all of Ish Yehudi. Still in all, even though he was from Shevet Binyamin, immediately at the beginning of the Megillah, it says about him, there was an Ish Yehudi. So we see that Yehudi is not talking about a name of a Shevet. It's the name that Yidden had at that time. It's like Yidden these days are called Jews. Jews, where does the word Jews come from? To my knowledge, it comes from the idea that they originally came from Judah, from Shevet Yehuda. In other words, is every Jew from Shevet Yehuda? No, they're Kanim, they're Levium. There's people from Binyamin, there's people from other Shvatim that are mixed in. But Lapoil, the word Jew came to mean every single person from Am Yisrael. The same thing. Mordechai, even though he was in Shevet Binyamin, he was called a Jew, Yehudi. To such a degree, even before we even know his name, like it says afterwards, and his name was Mordechai. We know already that what's he about? He's a Jew. He's an Ish Yehudi. It's very interesting what the Rebbe is pointing out over here. Let's say later on where it talks about his lineage. So it says, his name was Mordechai. He was from here, from there, Ish Yemini from Shevet Binyamin. Here, before we even identify him by name, we say there was a Jew. There was an Ish Yehudi. And his name was Mordechai. You don't say, the Megillah doesn't say, a person by the name of Mordechai. He was a Jew. He was an Ish Yehudi. No. The first identifier, the first way of giving some type of hold on who this person was, Ish Yehudi. Then only afterwards we mentioned Ushmai Mordechai. He says in line 14, Yodim Kvar, so we already know Shinyane, who Yosi Ish Yehudi, the idea behind him is that he's Ish Yehudi. Giselle, if he should mudgish kan in Shayachalis, Vu Bishavet, Kol Misha B'Shem Yisrael Yechuna. because what's emphasized over here is something that's able to be and is equal by every person that's even called by the name of a Yid. That every single person, the common of the Jewish people, the common denominator is Shuba Maimed or Matzav Shenikra B'Shem Yehudi. So before even identifying him by his personal name Mordechai, you bring out the common thing that all Yidden have, that all Yidden are in a state, in a situation of being a Yehudi. But what's the idea behind it? That the Yidden are all called Yehudim throughout the Megillah. The difference in the literal sense amongst the Shvatim. Why are there different Shvatim? This Shevet, that Shevet. All differences and all things that take place in the physical world are an extension, an expression of the spiritual divisions. Because of their distinctions in their spiritual service. Until there is those that's called the greatest of all the Shvatim. There's also the latter end, the most descendant of the Shvatim, those whatever exactly that may mean, the descendant of the Shvatim, even those, maybe it was those that were at the end of the camp, maybe it was it could be something else. But by all of them, there was something that is equal by all, that's a common denominator, that there is no differences between them. Therefore, they are all called Yehudim. That's why it's understood. Why all of them are in such a state where it says v'kibbel Yehudim in the singular, v'gam l'shoin kabbalah, and also it uses the word receive. Meaning that all of them were on the level of receiving, like the level of Moshe or Matan Torah, they received the Torah on Har Sinai. Also, what it says that they accepted and they received what they began to do. The days of Purim, and the Rebbe says it doesn't just mean then in Purim in the times of Achashverosh, but the Mea Purim means from then and on. Gam Ata also now. Why is that also now? Because since these days, once they are remembered, they are done all over again, meaning that all these things of Purim are occurring anew. Hoisa Kabbalah was the receiving, Hagmar Vasim the Matan Torah, it's the conclusion of the giving of the Torah. The calls a hul, fishing time, but my the matzah, the crime, which Yehudim will come on, because we are found in such a state and situation that we're called Yehudim, as we will say further on. Any questions? Top of page Ches, is given. Yesh lebayit tchila chidush and nasa b'kabbalas haTorah v'mei purim l'gaba mashahoy v'matan Torah. We have to first explain the uniqueness that occurred in the receiving of the Torah in the days of Purim over what was by Matan Torah. To such a degree that then by Purim was the conclusion and the ending of the receiving of the Torah, as opposed to by Matan Torah, they only began to. How do we explain that? By first prefacing and explaining the novelty of the giving of the Torah over the Torah the way it was prior to this. Because from the days of our forefathers, there was never any Torah study that stopped. There was always yeshiva. Yidden were learning Torah. And to such a degree, it wasn't just study, but it was fulfilling. To such a degree that Avraham Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah, even prior to it being given. To note, in this expression itself, it's emphasized that Avraham Avinu, even though he had the Torah, but it wasn't given to him. That's what it says. Kiyam Avram v'yis kol Torah kula ad shaloi nitna. He didn't have the idea of the giving of the Torah. And along with that he didn't have the giving of the Torah, V'afal became Kiyam as kol Torah kula. Still in all, he fulfilled the entire Torah. Now the Rebbe introduces, what does it mean, Kiyam? So there's Kishnei Pirushim b'Kiyam. There are two explanations, two meanings in the word Kiyam. Kiyam kipshut, a literal sense of fulfilling. Also much kasab b'Torah. He did what it says in the Torah. Like the examples that's brought down the Gemara of a Medrash, he baked matzahs on Pesach, etc. That's why it says that when the Malachim came to him, he prepared ugos matzahs and so on. But another explanation it says about the word kiyem, that what's it mean that kiyem Avraham kol Torah kulam, that v'gam shepal b'Torah amida v'kiyum. He affected in the Torah that it stood and it was strong like a kiyum, an existence. Not just he fulfilled the Torah, he affected the Torah a strength and an existence, which I guess didn't have before Avraham did it. What exactly that means, I'm not sure exactly. I don't recall a different place where the Rebbe speaks about it. To note, what the Avos fulfilled in the Torah is in addition to the idea of Torah that was before the days of Avraham. And not just before the days of Avraham, but before even the world. To such degree that we say 2,000 years the Torah preceded the world. And the truth is, even prior to the 2,000 years the Torah existed. Because the idea that 2,000 years the Torah preceding the world, that's the way the Torah is already in the category. It already falls into the definition of 2,000 years. So what does that mean? It falls into that category. First of all, that the Torah falls into the category of a number. We use the term alpayim, 2,000. It's a big number, but it's still a number. Though the meaning of alpayim, we always explain that our mitzvah that it's a meaning alpayim. What's it mean 2,000? It means from the word aluf. Aluf means teaching. I will teach you chachma. I will teach you bina. It's still in the category of a number. In other words, it ain't mikri item de pshuta. It also means the number, so it has to do with the world of number. But really, Torah is beyond it. It's also in the category of year. Not just the number of 2,000, but 2,000 years. And also, there's the Torah already. In that phrase, the Torah already has to do with the category of the world. Top of page 10. That's why it says that it preceded the world. The fact that you're saying that precedes something else, that means there's a relationship with another thing. All this applies only by something is in the category of the world. But preceded the world. But the Torah on its own. In other words, not even the Alpine Shon, higher than the Alpine Shon. See what it says about the Torah itself. I will be a plaything, a toy. I will be something of enjoyment before him, before the Eibshter himself. It's concealed from the eyes of all living beings. And all the other qualities that's enumerated about the Torah, the way it's before even being by him and Amen. The Chazal say, what does it mean that the Torah was by him and Amen? So they say Amen is the word professional, a vessel of his profession. My Uman, she actually because it's like a professional, like a craftsman, has all types of plans and blueprints. So the Torah was a blueprint and a plan for the creation of the world. But the true nature of the Torah is completely removed from it. The way we call the Torah Amen, that it's a tool of the craftsman to be able to make the world, that's already the Torah, the way it's connected to the world, but our Kadma it only preceded the world. So that is not the highest level of Torah. The main idea of Torah is that's an expression of lesson and teaching. That is the greatness of study that brings to action. That's why Torah is in the word Torah. When did the action begin? All these high levels, there was no action yet. When did action begin? It began from Avraham Avinu that fulfilled the entire Torah. That's the idea of Torah, the way it comes down, the way fulfillment of action. So therefore, that's the highest idea of Torah that comes down. Since it was like the highest idea of Torah, Avraham Avinu manifested what is the uniqueness of the giving of the Torah over the fulfilling of the Torah through Avraham.